Hi there. Today it is exactly 4 weeks since my last garden tour, and it's a picking day again. So before I pick the flowers, I thought I would show you how the garden has changed in that time frame. So it's only a month, but we're in peak season. So things have gone on in leaps and bounds. So come with me for a look around and see what's changed. This is the Originum at the beginning of July, mainly green with a hint of blue. This is it now at the end of July, a lot more blue. I have actually picked some of this, although it's really difficult to determine which ones are best to pick. This is clearly blue, but some of them on that branch are not. So it's difficult to decide when is a good time. It's actually also covered in a lot of flies, which I think we need to be grateful for the insects. It just seems very bizarre. So many flies this year, so many flies. Look at them, loads. Absolutely heaving in it, but it's looking good. As I say, I've picked some. Moving on to the Amobium, there are still some flower heads that are okay, but it's not as good as it was, and as you can see there are some flower heads that have gone over. In fact, the majority of it has gone over really. If we try and compare that to what we had at the beginning of June, which is this, then it is, although similar, different. There's not as many branches and it just doesn't look as good. So I will be removing that eventually. I'm not really going to be picking any more of that. Next, let's look at the straw flowers. This is it at the beginning of July. Loads. They'd only just started flowering at this point, so they weren't quite open. I wasn't picking many. But now, if we look at it, loads. In fact, it looks pretty similar when I compare the two, but there's more ready to be picked. There's more open. As you can see, there are some open heads there. And I have been getting armfuls of this. I must have picked hundreds of stems. I've got loads of flower heads from this, and this will continue, I'm sure, for at least another month. So straw flowers are doing really well, and that was my plan. I sowed them early so that they would flower early so I could dry them in the heat of the summer, and it's working out brilliantly. Next, let's look at the larkspur. This was it at the beginning of June. I'd already had a couple of weeks of pickings. Some of the flower leaves were looking worse for wear. This is it now, so it is definitely finished. There are still some blue stems, but really the tips of those ends have gone to seed. So I could empty the bed if I had something else to go in there. I haven't, so I am leaving them in for two reasons. One is the roots are better off in the soil, keeping the structure good, and letting it decay within there with the microorganisms. Plus, the flowers I'm hoping will go to seed and will hopefully self-sow. As you can see, there's some seed heads there. So I am trying to see whether I can get any flowers with no effort on my part. We shall see. It may or may not work. I could be just being hopeful. However, this is what's happened from last year. So last year this bed was snapdragons And this is a snapdragon that has appeared without me doing anything. I didn't even know it was there until I started filming. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the larkspur will do something similar. Further along the bed, this area also had larkspur in it, but we've now got a bit of dill that seems to have self-sown. I cleared this out early on because they were just getting caught up in themselves and really difficult to pick. But this whole 3 sections were all larkspur. A few self-sown calendula there. Now this area, I tried to sow some cosmos. I maybe did it at the wrong time. We've had a bit of a drought and they've died, so they're not really flourishing. It was an area that had gone to grass and achillea in here, and so I was trying to weed it. It has been well composted, so I had hoped that anything would grow quite well, but things are struggling. Certainly these cosmos are, but this is a nice flower that I wasn't expecting this colour, so hopefully it will turn out nice. Back in the beginning of July, the feverfew was looking fantastic. It was probably just starting to get to its peak. Now it's gone over a bit, but we have had a lot of pickings out of this. It has looked fantastic, not so much now, so I shall be cutting this back and hoping for a second flush later in the season. The billy buttons have been okay. I've had a few stems, but nothing much. They don't really produce many flowering stems per plant, which is why you need probably a lot of them to get a good harvest. But they're still good to go, and I would expect them to continue flowering for the rest of the season. Another self-sown dill. The heliotrope is probably past its best. The flowers are not as big and they are not as plentiful as they were earlier on. I'm going to leave it in just in case, but this is them looking brilliant in early July. The 2 varieties that I have, both have been fantastic. I have got a lot of stems from them. There's also some self-sown nicotiana there. Moving on to the zinnias, these have certainly padded out the space. This is it in early June. Things were eating all of them. That was all fully planted with zinnias. They were tiny. I was worried that it would not get covered. Now this is it in end of July. The fully padded out, as you can see. We have those little pink ones that were visible in the original video. They've grown. They're still not as big as the others in comparison, but they are more significant than I thought they would be. And that whole bare patch is now covered by this queen lime zinnia that we've got going on there. So that has improved. Plus we've got this self-sown sprinkled grass there, and I'm never going to remove that because it's brilliant. This is the yarrow in early June. Massive, taller than me. Now in late July, we've had the best of it. The flower heads are smaller, which actually are more manageable than the bigger ones. I'm going to cut the final lot and then cut it back down. We may get a second flush at the end of it, but I won't hold my breath. And that would then leave some sunlight to get through to the China aster and the scabiose, which is planted there. A few random plants, plus a cafe-au-lait dahlia here at the back, which happens to have a bud. So one of the first dahlias that will flower, actually. This is the status in early July, so just starting to colour but not yet ready to pick. This is it now, so absolutely ready to pick. I have just picked a few actually, and there's more ready to go. This is definitely a cut and come again plant. You can pick as much as you like from this. It never seems to stop. So until you get bored, you can pick. And let me tell you, you can get too much status. It just keeps going on and on. However, this is the pink pokers. I've cut it, and this is what's resulted. This was it in early July. Brilliant plants, brilliant flowers, but I really have only had one cut, and this is what we're left with. So there's a few small stems, but that I don't think they're going to amount to much, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think that's probably it for them for this year. They also look as if they're going to die any minute, so that could be where we are with those. Next to them, I grew the perennial limonium, which is this lovely. This is them now cut. So again, I don't think it's a cut and come again plant. But what it does produce in the season is fantastic, and there's a lot of it. So we haven't got loads of plants here, but it produced a lot of stems. But it all went. Here's what's left. We've got a little branch there which may come to something, but I'm not holding out too much more than that. I think that is finished for the season. Next to the perennial limonium, we had this section which had resulted in only 3 gomphrenias, a random lupin and a couple of strawberry plants. Something was eating the plants there, and I think it was my cat's toilet. Subsequent to that, I have planted in some celosia to make up some of the space that was there, and the gomphrenia is still there. If you can see the pink pom-poms, they are quite small. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but they're smaller than I was anticipating, but nevertheless we have something there. Now on to my troublesome beds. Back in beginning of July, this section was not planted, and all it seemed to grow was thistles. At the other end of the bed I had planted some dill, some amimagus, and then onto there some snapdragons and antirrhinums. The flowers were not, or the plants were not big at this point, nowhere near flowering. We also had some achillea. I only sowed these seeds this year. They will be a perennial, and I had some flowers already on them, which was quite pleasing. Moving on 4 weeks. The thistles are back with a vengeance, but I also planted some celosia in that empty space that we had. I don't have high hopes of it flowering, but maybe it will. It didn't flower last year, so I'm not expecting it to, but really I just wanted to see if there was any chance. The achillea has really doubled in size, I would say. Everything's starting to flower, plants are so much bigger, stems are longer. In amongst the thistles it's difficult to tell, but I'm really pleased with their progress, along with the snapdragons. So if you remember, they were tiny plants, and really within the last week they've just started to flower, and I think nearly every stem on there has a flower. The amimagus has also started to flower, but the dill, I think I lost that straight away. Nothing more has come of that. But otherwise than that, it's not doing bad from a very poor start. Let's move on to the dahlias. I felt at the beginning of July the dahlias were disappointing. In comparison to last year, maybe I shouldn't have been, because they were all eaten by slugs last year. So actually the fact that these had leaf and were growing should have been a bonus, or should have been considered a bonus, but they just didn't look as if they were flourishing. They weren't very big, and I was really kind of disappointed. Move that on 4 weeks and this is what we've got. The dahlias have probably doubled if not tripled in size, and we even have some flowers. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to be flowering at this point in time. That's a cafe au lait that's just about to come into bud, so that's pretty good going. But normally I don't get flowers until August. We're now at the end of July, so we're probably ahead of the game, given that we've got flowers on one over here. It's really strange, this one, because I have no idea what it is. I thought it was going to be Sweet Natalie, which is a really pale pink decorative dahlia. This, I think, is an anemone type. It's certainly not pale pink. I don't know what it is. It must have come in a bundle last year, and it didn't flower because of all of the slug damage. But it is certainly making up for it now. There are so many buds ahead of time, so it's looking pretty good. My garden has massively shifted in those 4 weeks. I have flowers that were doing nothing 4 weeks ago that are most definitely in a good state of bloom now. The dahlias have probably doubled in size, but I have beds that could be empty and I haven't got anything more to go in them. And in reality, that kind of was planned for. I want to say it was planned for. My aim was for drying. So I need to dry the flowers in the heat of the summer. So July, August. So I need everything to be flowered at their best at that point in time, so they can go into my drying room and dry quickly to avoid mould. And that has most definitely been achieved because my drying space has been jam-packed full for weeks. So even if all of the flowers finish end of August, I have succeeded in that goal for this year. However, as it happens, I also have been requested to make a fresh bunch of flowers every year for a local pub, and that's focused the mind somewhat on what I've got available. The dried flowers that do look good, the statice, straw flowers, I don't really like in a fresh flower arrangement. So it has been a challenge until this week, really, to have nice looking cut flowers for those arrangements. But this week, I think we might be over that hurdle. We've got the snapdragons, we've got the zinnias, we have got some achillea. If I wanted to and can get over my aversion, the straw flowers could go in because they would look fabulous. No one would know any different. It's just me. Just me. I don't think they should be in fresh flowers. They should be dried. Hopefully, these flowers will last for a few weeks longer, and then we have the dahlias. So, as I wasn't really planning for fresh flowers weekly, I haven't done bad, although I have to say my arrangements have been somewhat experimental at times. But I've been able to provide something, and I'm sure that will continue for at least the next month. We'll see what September brings us. So in summary, the garden has changed in 4 weeks, and it's amazing how things evolve in nature over a short period of time. Let me know in the comments below what's been working for you and what you've struggled with. And if you want access to some guides about flower growing, subscribe to my newsletter and my freebie hub called the Flower Files. And that will give you some guides on colour, where to begin and what to grow in a flower garden to help you get started. But until next time, happy gardening.